There is a growing and dangerous crisis emerging on politicized cable news. And that crisis is they keep trying to scare us by telling us everything is a, quote, crisis. The politicized networks have made alarmism their stop-and trade, 24 hours a day. Panic and fear, and depending on the network, it's a different crisis that we all need to fear.
Following America's crime crisis,
there's a water crisis in Mississippi.
And a crisis unfolding in Greenland.
All right, now to the global energy crisis.
To this national security crisis.
With the border crisis story.
The unprecedented crisis at our border.
Border crisis, the inflation crisis, the crime crisis.
That's the moral crisis, right?
Well done to my producers, by the way, in putting that together. On politicized networks, almost everything is a five-alarm crisis. 24 hours a day. We searched cable news transcripts over the past month and found that the word crisis was mentioned a whopping 2,750 times. When you break it up by network, you can see that Fox News has mentioned crisis the most times, with the other two combined keeping it close. Now, that sort of makes sense, given the political bent of Fox and that we're under a Democratic administration. They warn of the crisis at the border, crisis of crime, the inflation crisis. On the liberal-leaning CNN and MSNBC, viewers have forever been receiving dire warnings about the end of democracy, the climate crisis, the opioid crisis. Now, let me be clear. These are all real stories that ought to be covered. It's just that not every story needs to be trying to scare the bejesus out of us. Now, in the interest of transparency, we also looked up this show. And apparently, I've used the word crisis once in the past month in a reference to a shortage of police officers. And so it's hardly surprising that a recent study showed that watching too much news can be very bad for your health. Researchers at Texas Tech found that Americans who obsessively follow the news are more likely to suffer from both physical and mental health problems, including anxiety and stress. The study finds that those who constantly check the headlines end up with, quote, significantly greater physical ill-being than those who tune in less often. The research adds that constantly keeping on top of the latest developments can lead to a vicious cycle where people become addicted to breaking news that is often not breaking news at all.
Breaking news, U.S. Secret Service Assistant Director Tony Ornato has left.
Breaking news this hour, a bipartisan group of lawmakers on an unannounced trip to Taiwan.
Breaking news this afternoon, some bad outcomes for the conservative operation known as Project Veritas.
All right, some of those are breaking news. But joining me now to talk about this is journalist and host Melissa Francis. Melissa Francis in the house. Great to have you.
You know, you're a word guy, so I want to ask you, instead of crisis, what word would you use? Concern?
Depends.
Kerfuffle?
Depends on the issue, right?
Kind of medium thinking
right.
on this?
I mean,
what would you use?
They did a good job, right, in putting together all those things about it's a this crisis, it's a that crisis, right? Not everything has to be referred to, right? It's
so
a
what word?
Depends on the issue. So I'll talk about the time I used it, right? Where I talked about the fact that police officers in this country are leaving the department in droves, that they need funding, et cetera. Right. I think that instead of crisis, I could have probably used the word problem. I could have said that there is a significant issue around the country now, or there is a consistent issue. But the problem is, when we use the same word again and again and again, people stop trusting us. They say, oh, it's another breaking news. Oh, it's another crisis. It's another this, it's another that. No?
Yeah. No, what the problem is that there's 5 million news outlets now, and you're competing with everyone online. So you have to set off flares. You have to do whatever you possibly can to get people to watch. By the way, I think you're going to get in trouble for doing this segment later tonight, because it's all of these crises that get people to tune in that make it a business that pay the bills.
Yeah.
See, I come from a business background, covered financial news forever. A lot of people forget that we're not out here to teach people what they should and shouldn't think and what they should think is a crisis and not. And maybe you're a do-gooder, but you don't make money that way.
Wait, are you telling me
are you here for free?
This is all not about capital J journalism? We're here to actually not just to inform people, but to make money?
Are you donating your time, or are you getting paid for being here?
And I don't consider myself a journalist, by the way, either. So you're talking to the wrong guy if you think that somehow I'm going to be claiming, oh, I'm just here to... Look, I try to call out what I view as the political extremes, right? And I think that part of that is that both extremes are calling everything a crisis.
Yes.
And that's part of the outrage machine that, you're right, is good for business and bad for America.
Well, I don't know. I mean, who are we to say what is good and bad for America? Who gets to decide?
I do. I get to.
It's you.
Yes,
okay.
I get to decide.
So you're the arbiter of what's good and bad for America.
I get to decide all of this stuff. I get to decide what's good and bad for America because here's the thing.
Yeah.
People can completely ignore me. Right?
Exactly,
they can say,
and they can watch something else and then you won't have a job.
Exactly. They can say, I don't care what he thinks, but I'll still get to say it. Right? So, but it doesn't trouble you at all, sort of as being experienced as you are in the cable news world?
It doesn't trouble me that there's too many people out there calling it a crisis. I think what troubles me is that people don't think for themselves. If you are really so ginned up by what you're watching on television, you shouldn't be watching it. And in fact, I don't watch cable news any longer. I agree with you. They do fake everything into being a huge crisis. I just don't think that's a crisis. I think that's a mark of stupidity, and people that continue to watch that are themselves stupid, or they're just watching it to pass the time because they're really doing something else. Because let's be honest out there, that's what a lot of people are doing. You have it on in the background, you're actually doing something else, you're cooking, you're doing whatever.
You know this world, we gotta go.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. Melissa
I bet
Francis,
you do.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
That does it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.